Welcome to the Corporate Detox podcast. I'm your host, Amanda McWhorter. I'm a corporate dropout, recovering people pleaser and perfectionist turned burnout recovery coach. If you are sick of the corporate roller coaster ride and ready to step into a life you love, this is the podcast for you. Hey there, welcome back to the Corporate Detox podcast. I'm your host, Amanda McWhorter, and today I want to chat about something you heard a little bit about on this last episode with Joelle Murray. This is the fact that we should not allow our identity to become wrapped up in our career. And I wanted to deep dive in this today because I think it's super important that folks think about this. I know for me, in my 18 years of retail management, I didn't think of this aspect. So what am I talking about? X brand, right? Like Amanda from the neighborhood grocery store. Everything that I did in the community had that company's name attached to it. So if I went to my local county fair, I was typically there to buy a market animal for that company, right? As a way of giving back. When I would join local boards, right? They attach your company name to that as well. So here's where this can get really, really sticky in the situation of as you change and evolve. And really for the purpose of what we like to talk about here in the podcast of corporate detox. So when we let our identity become solely tied to our professional life, it really allows ourselves to get out of a healthy balance. So I like to take a holistic look with my clients on their overall well-being, their overall life, right? Not just the professional aspect, but we really dig into a lot of things. And when you rely solely on your career for identity, it can lead to neglecting other important aspects of your life, such as your relationships, right? Your family, your friends, your romantic relationships with your children. It can often lead to neglecting hobbies. So I remember people asking me, and this was asked of me a couple times, Amanda, what do you like? Like, what's your hobby? What do you like to do? I had such a hard time answering that question because I worked. And I would tell people that, oh, I just like to work. I like to work. That's my hobby. The reality was work consumed my life and I allowed it, right? I was working 6 days a week. If I was lucky and got a 5-day work week, you can bet that at least one of those 2 days off was typically fielding calls. I worked for an organization where it was like this always on culture. There were texts flying at all times of the day. You were expected to answer if there was an issue, and it wasn't always a big issue. And I thought that was normal because that's all that I knew. And when I left that corporate space, I started to find out that that is very not true of some places that people work. One of my first clients that I did OBM work for, and I still actually work with this group of folks, they really value work-life balance. And I remember being told that, and I thought to myself, like, wow, it'll be interesting to see. And it is like when they're off, they're off. They have very good boundaries on their calendars. They have very good boundaries. I mean, heck, they all basically go take a lunch at some point. They all work remotely, but they have a lunch break. Like, I wasn't accustomed to that working retail. So to get back to what we're talking about with like allowing your career to consume your life, right? And that really being your identity. There's just so many kind of like red flags. Think of when you decide to change priorities in your life. So for me, I went from being a woman with no children to then being a mom. And I can tell you that shift and for parents out there, this. Like that shift it's a big life shift and your priorities change. And where I could stay at the store or stay at the office late, I couldn't do that all the time with my son. That's when I really started kind of having this identity crisis because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to say no. That career was my identity. And it was hard for me to fit another identity into my life. Work is taking precedence over life. The other thing is resilience. When you get a setback in your career, it is very, very, very hard for you to not feel inadequate or worthless. And I'm going to speak to this of the perspective of when you leave that career. And for some of us, that might be brought on by layoffs, or maybe your job was eliminated. Maybe you were terminated. Maybe you decide to quit on your own. If you have allowed that career to become your identity, you go through this whole identity crisis when you're no longer going to that job every day. You do feel inadequate. You do feel worthless. I felt them both. In the beginning, after I gave my resignation, it was like a vacation. It was like I had a month off. After that is when those feelings of inadequacy, of worthlessness come in. And I'll tell you, I'm recording this episode at a time where this just crept back into my life. I am almost 3 years post corporate, and this still creeps in to my life. When I allow the mindset, when I allow, those voices in my head that tell me that I'm not succeeding, when I listen to those, that's when I start to feel this again. So for me, it came in a wave this past week of feeling like, I don't have my business at a level that I wanted to, especially 3 years after leaving. And there was some panic going on. Some panic of, okay, Amanda, you left this, stable career and you're still not stable in what you're building. And this is me being very open and vulnerable with you because I know that there's someone out here today that needs to hear this. So those are feelings that continue to creep in. It took a really long time for people to know that I didn't work for that company anymore. I still run into folks that I would have thought would know that I wasn't working there anymore that don't, and I have to explain it. Those are the people that's how they knew me. They knew me from that career. They didn't know me as a mom. They didn't know me as the person that likes to be outdoors. They didn't know me as, the entrepreneur. They didn't know me as the thought leader. They knew me in that career, and that was my identity for so, so long. Let's go back to relationships for a second. So I talk about how that can have such a negative, our relationships can take the back seat to our career when we put our identity in that career. This is another thing that I went through. I went through a divorce. Now, I can tell you, we were both at fault when it came to what ended our marriage. I put so much into my career. My ex-husband's attorney would bring that up all the time about how I put so much into this career and I've neglected my marriage. And it would infuriate me because that afforded us a lot of things. But at the time, I was so wrapped up in that career that I didn't see all the damage that it had done to that relationship. So if you feel like you have been wrapped up in a career to the point where it has become your identity, there's still hope for you to take a step back, regain your sense of self, and still thrive. Nothing changes if nothing changes, right? So if you listen to this and you think, hey, that's me, but you don't take any steps to change it, it's going to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to issues with your relationships. It's going to lead to health issues of your own. It could possibly lead to you just leaving your job with no plan, which is what I did. So take the steps, put up some boundaries. I know you can do this. I see this happen with folks a good bit. And there's hope at the end of the tunnel, really, truly. So if you need help with that, reach out to me. This is the work that I do in the world. And nothing brings me more joy than to help people get out of this state. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. It's a shorter one. I do hope to do some more shorter episodes as the time goes on. And I hope this is something that you can consume on your drive to work or you're taking a walk, maybe washing the dishes. And I just hope that it plants a seed that grows into something amazing in your life. So, are you ready to start your own corporate detox journey? Well, if you are, make sure that you check out amandamcwhorter.net for different ways to work with me, as well as some freebies that could help you get started. If you're on social media, follow me at Amanda K. McWhorter on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.